If you're trying to use real-time data and create a web application with the ESP32 or ESP8266, you are at the right place. Welcome to Electronics Simplified. So without wasting any more time, let's get to the things we need. We'll need the ESP32 or the ESP8266. Next, we'll need the DHT11 sensor. I'm going to use the sensor for the data, since there should be some data, and we'll be using a breadboard to mount the circuit. We'll be using male-to-male jumper cables for the connections, and for the last part we'll be using the USB cable to upload the code. So let's begin with the connections. This is a circuit diagram here. You can pause and you can connect your circuit. Now this ESP has all the pins that I've selected on one side, so I'm going to mount it firmly onto the breadboard. I prefer using the breadboard and then moving the setup to, with any other jumper cables. So this is the DHT sensor. I'm going to place this as well. Now please note, if you're just using the sensor, consider using a pull-up resistor of 1K at least. Then let's connect the wires now. So the DHT11 sensor will have the data transmission, and the data will be transmitted from the data pin, and it will be given to GPIO 4 or D4 pin on the ESP32. So let's connect the ground of the DHT11 to the ground of the ESP32. The data pin will go to D4, and then the VCC pin will go to 3.3 volt. Now 3.3 volt is more than sufficient for the DHT11 sensor. If you have any other sensor, please consider using an external power supply. Next, we need to connect the USB, and thereafter we are all set to upload the code. So snap, and that's it. Now it's time to upload the code. So here's the code explained, since many of you requested for it. The code is in the description. I'm going to take this code of Firebase data and just paste it. The link is in the description. Now here I'm going to make all the changes that are required. Now since I'm using a DHT11 sensor, I'm going to code as per what sensor I'm using. If you're using it as per any other sensor, the steps would almost remain same or similar. Now I've added the dht.h, the header file. Now I already have added the library before, so I'm going to show you the library manager. I'm using DHT11, the DHT library by Adafruit, and I'm using a specific version since it is compatible and it works fine for me. Any other version, I have not tested it yet, so this version is more compatible. I would suggest you or recommend you to just stick with the same. There you go. So I'll specify this in the comments here so that you can refer to them even later. 1.3.8, that's absolutely right. Now we need to define the sensor pin. So define DHT sensor pin, and the sensor pin that we have chosen is pin number 4. We also need to specify the DHT sensor type, and the DHT sensor type I'm using is DHT11. You can choose whatever you have with you. So that's it. Now this information is basically to provide the information about the sensor, because DHT library is huge and there are a lot of different types of DHT sensors available in the market. So this information is for ESP32 or the ESP8266. Alright. Now it's time to create the instance. So DHT sensor, and here in this I need to specify the sensor. It's better if I copy the definition that I've made on top, copy it and paste it here, comma, the sensor type, and don't forget to put the semicolon. So I followed this step from the Adafruit library itself and make the other changes. Now in case I'm going to go a little quick here, since I have done most of these parts in my previous projects. If you are new to Firebase, I would recommend you to watch my previous video about Firebase and how to create authentication in a real-time database, and in case if you're facing any problem, how to fix it. I made an entire video on it, and that's more than 30 minutes, I guess. So it is worth watching. So there you go, I'm going to paste my API key, and now I'm all set. Now in the void setup function, I need to begin with the DHT11 sensor. So I'm going to write here DHT sensor dot begin, because begin is the function or the keyword that is provided by Adafruit. Semicolon. Anything else that needs to be taken care of here? Not yet, not here, not here. And I think we are all done. Now let's go to the void loop. Now this data here has to be updated after every 1 second, so I'm going to change this to 1000. You can change the frequency as per what you require. Okay, since we want the data to be updated every 1 second, I have changed it to 1000. If you want it to change even more faster, go ahead and change it down to 100. It's going to work. I don't need this part because it's serial prints. I don't need the parts that are going to be mentioned here. Make a better error message. Type here fail to read from the sensor, which makes more sense. Copy the same error message and paste it down below, because I have two sections. One section is for reading the temperature and one section is for reading the humidity. So there you go. So that's it. Now this is the path here, and this is the variable called count that was used in the previous activity. But now this path will be changed. Okay, but before that we need to make the two variables temperature and humidity. So these two temperature and humidity variables are going to be their data type is going to be float, and we are going to read them from the sensor and store them in the variables. The same variables are going to be passed to the database. These variables are used so that we can use most of the data for storage, and we can use it whenever we want or wherever we want, I would say. So temperature equal to, let's call the check name here, okay, DHT sensor. So it is read temperature. So this is the function name to read the temperature, and it's very easy to remember. The same way we will write humidity equal to DHT sensor dot read humidity. So now these two functions are done. Now this function type, actually this variable is a float type, so I enter float there. Both of them are float values, otherwise we will have an error saying undefined data type. Alright, now this variable has to be replaced with this count here, and humidity has to be replaced with the data below. This was to generate random numbers, I guess. Yeah. Now both my variables are there. Now I'm going to change the path DHT_11, and it's going to be stored in under temperature. So temperature, and do the same thing for humidity as well. Just replace it with DHT_11. Make sure that the spelling is same so that it gets listed down in the same path, or else you'll have two different paths. And I think that's it. Now this section is not really important, but since we really need to know whether the data has been transmitted to our database or no, so we are going to serially print something or the other in this particular section. So basically the data will be sent even if you don't write anything here, doesn't really matter. I'm going to add a comment. This is completely optional. Okay, but the error messages should not be left blank, since you really need to know. Otherwise, you would never know whether you really have an error. So I'll write here serial print temperature semicolon serial dot print new line. Okay, and the variable name, it's a simple T. Okay, so paste it on a new line. So ln, do the same thing with the humidity. I don't need this count variable. What is this comment doing here? Let's change it. So I've entered comments which will be used for your reference. You can read them and understand what is happening in the code. That's it. Okay, now it's done. This is temperature. Scroll all the way down. Let me check more what needs to be changed. So here too I need to just serially print humidity, and I think thereafter we are all done. Let's still format this again. Looks better now. So when we test it for the first time, the compilation definitely is going to take a very long time. So you'll see that. Let's save the work, and Firebase, let's call it as DHT11 DHT real time, since it's real time data with a web app. The web app is going to be programmed next. So if you already have this code, you can skip to the web application and also take the code from there. I'm going to upload this code, select your board type, select everything else, and then looks like I need to reconnect my ESP32. Yeah, there you go. Now it's appearing on my COM port 4. I'll just hit on upload and let it start uploading. Now this will definitely take a while, and I'm gonna take a break on this and we'll be back. So I fast forwarded this entire portion, but still managed to, it ran for around 4 minutes. Now you can see that my data is being logged on to my real-time database. So I can actually see humidity is 51. See, it's updating after every, and the temperature has updated too. Now let's create the web application. Now in order to design the web application, we are going to create HTML files. I'm going to call it as web_app.html. So I have Sublime text editor, and I'm going to start off by calling this as DHT sensor. Now you can give it any title right down there. It's not a matter. The HTML file, you can design the entire web page by yourself, but you need to take the configurations or create the web app in Firebase and take the script from here. So first register your app, give it a name, register the application. On registering the application, you will get the script which you will have to copy paste. So this is a configuration that is there. Now this configuration, no, we do not need this one because this is for the npm. You can select the option for script tag and you can copy this and paste it into your web app. I'll tell you what to do with this in a short while. Before that, we will design the layout which is going to display temperature and humidity. You can skip this section of designing and directly move on to the script part and see how the code is fetching the data, or you could also just find this code in the description and use it to just check whether you are actually receiving your data on a web application. I'm going to create a division, a main container, and under this I will be creating two sub categories or two sub divisions, which will one have the data item, which will be the temperature, and then the other one is going to be humidity. So this is just very simple. If you can design a better web app and a layout, please let me know. You could send me a recommendation in the link, in the chat, and I would be happy to know about it. So I'm creating a paragraph so that I can display the value, and I'm going to copy the code for degree centigrades. I don't need the C here now. Next, I need to do the same thing for my other data item, that is humidity. So right here, humidity as the heading, and then humidity just has percentage, so I'm just going to write 10% here. So this is how it will be displayed without any CSS or without any styling. So I'm going to add internal style. So let's go ahead, data container, and then let's add display flex so that the data is displayed next to each other. I need some space now in between, so the command would be justify content and say space between. It's going to create some space, but I'm going to specify the width for the division that I've created to be 50%. That's fine. Then you can keep adding the code that you need, and you can keep adding the properties. The CSS really doesn't bother the data, so you can go on and code whatever CSS that you want. So I'm also going to add a little background color. So I'm going to choose a color FFF, and also drop a box shadow 0, 2 pixels, 20 pixels, and then the RGBA. So it'd be black. One is going to be too much, so 0.1 should be great. Let's check it out. So I can see my division right down here, and it all looks good. It's time to work a little bit on the font type. So my entire web app is going to be inside the body, so I'm going to write body and give it some properties. So the properties are going to be background color. Give it a color. I'm going to pick something random. F5, F5, F5. Let's see what it looks like. Oh, it's fine. Fantastic. So next, we are going to specify the font family Arial, sans serif. Should be great. And just reload and check. Yeah, so the changes are taking place in real time as I code too. So I'm going to add a margin and add a padding. Everything looks fine now. So this so far looks alright to get started with. Alright, now I'm going to go to a little more in depth. I'm going to add some border radius to the previous main container that I had created. And I'm also going to give some more styling to the data and the data items that are there on my web app. Now it is your choice if you wish to continue with the code trying to understand this part of HTML and CSS, or else since I've already mentioned that the timeline is there in the description, you can actually pick the topic that is next and you can move on with a finished web application. So I'm going to create the data item here, added a font size and probably 24px. Oops, didn't change. So yeah, and I'm going to also add fonts weight to be bold. So the change is not taking place actually. Alright, I think I have figured it out. I have data item here and temperature, right? So now what we are going to do is we are going to create another class. So I'm adding some more properties, and you can add endless properties like I've already mentioned. So if you have any kind of requests or any kind of Firebase related queries, you can drop them in the comment. If you have some problems with the web application and you need some help, you can drop it down in the comments. I always read the comments and reply to them. Please make sure that you have watched my other videos before you can actually come up with questions and queries, since I always make a good follow-up of all the detailed work that would be needed to create a particular project. So since this was requested by many of the users and my subscribers, I have decided to create a detailed video for Firebase applications. So I think now my layout is almost complete, and if you are new here, then definitely after the simplified explanation that I've given you, I recommend you to definitely subscribe to this channel, since you will get similar updates and you can stay tuned with a lot of interesting topics that I'll be covering on this channel. So there you go. My CSS looks fine, but there's something wrong here with my scrolling. So I've accidentally added 50% here in the margins. I'm going to change it to 50px, and it was supposed to be 50px, so 50 pixels, and it's done. Now it's fine. So far it looks all good, but it's headless. It has no heading. So I'm going to add a heading a little later, but let's see if there's anything else that needs to be fixed first. I'm going to give this a class since the properties are not getting applied directly. So I'm going to call this class value and modify this value class now. Let's create the head as well first. So this class is going to be called as, let's call it data head. And then the heading, DHT sensor readings. So this is going to be my heading, and now real time. Now it's all loaded, and my CSS has also updated for some reason now. Alright, so data head, and start giving the margin auto, then width again 50%. Then let's justify the content or text align in the center. So yes, it works. And the font size definitely has to be big enough. So let's choose somewhere around 45 pixels. Okay, that's big. Font weight to be bold. Let's see. Looks fine. Then something still looks missing. So I'm trying to go on to add an entire border. I've already given margin, but I'm going to give margin of 50 px on top again, and change, and also give some more padding on all the sides. Background color again, then box shadow, which is there already mentioned previously. I'm using the same CSS as what I have used before for the previous classes, and it looks all fine now. So since I've mentioned the box shadow color as well, let's have a look at our web application. Now it looks all fantastic. Now my web app is actually complete, and it looks fine. Now all we have to do is actually get the real-time data now. This data is not changing because we have not configured the variables yet. After we have already taken the configuration and we have pasted it into our web app, we still need to initialize Firebase by writing these commands: firebase.initialize app, and initialize it with the configuration that was pasted earlier. I'm going to create a variable called database, firebase.database, and initialize this real-time database. Next, this is just for getting referencing to the database. Getting references to the data we want, let's take data reference 1, so that is database.reference 1. So we need to find the first data, that is DHT11 / temperature, and let's write the next data reference, that is data reference 2, and it is humidity. So fetch the data. So data reference 1 on value. On is a function that will keep on repeating and keep on fetching the data. So I'll say humidity equal to get data 1. So I'm going to also paste this humidity dot inner HTML in this manner. So same way, change the temperature as well. We don't need this degree centigrade since it's already passed in on top. Alright, so let's save this and actually reload and check. For some reason the data is still not updating. Okay, let me check the ID names. The ID names are perfect now. So let's actually check the scripts that I actually needed for Firebase. So on reading the documentation, I realized that the product links are also necessary, so I decided to add them by myself. I couldn't find them anywhere, and I was using 8.6.8 Firebase. So these links again will be there in the description. You don't need to worry. I'm going to change them, and let's see. So after a lot of finding out, I realized that it still didn't work. And time to check the console. There's an error somewhere else now. 96, 102, 6. And then after having a look at all my code, I just realized that there could be some other error as well. So on spotting the change, I decided to look at the console one more time, and then when I had a look at the script type, I just deleted it. So it still didn't work thereafter. I inspected it again, and then I saw the error is the line number has changed to 118. So I changed that to the variable name was repeated, so it didn't work. And thereafter, my humidity and temperature is interchanged, so now the app looks perfectly fine. So if you loved making this app, please subscribe to my channel, and thank you for watching.